Okay, welcome back. This is part 2 of my concept plan in PowerPoint crash course on how to create a really quick electronic concept plan. So I have already drawn the fence, the property line, the driveway, the house, the shed, the garden bed. So if I was going to be doing work on the front yard, I may want to also include the lines out to the property here. But because I'm working in the backyard, I'm not going to worry about it. So from here, my next step, I'm just going to duplicate this slide so I can do it and then go back and show you. Okay, so my next step is to take away the picture because I've got everything I have. So I can move it to the side and keep it there for reference. Or if I want to get rid of it, I could right click on my mouse and hit cut and it would disappear. So now you can see I've got everything that I drew and the picture's gone. Now, it doesn't look like anything except rectangles, property lines, etc. So now we want to go in and label. So we're going to insert lines and text boxes. So the lines are going to go out from each thing we want to label, and I'm going to do all the lines the same. So I'm going to use black, I'm going to use 0.5 point, so it's a thin line, so it shouldn't interfere too much with the drawing. I'm going to hit Control C and Control V, and I'm going to put it on all the things I want to label. Bed there, patio, 1 tree, 2 trees. Now, when you're identifying plant material like this on a plan, it's recommended that you try and get your identifying line somewhere in the middle of the object. That makes it really obvious what it is you're trying to label. If you put it on the edge of the object, it's hard to tell that that's what you're actually indicating. So make sure it's in the center. So one thing is you want to line these all up so it looks nice and clean. So what I do for that is I actually just insert another line. And PowerPoint will help you keep it level. So it's straight up and down, you don't have any crooked. If you notice on the map when we logged on, north was upwards. So I want to have a north arrow to indicate that that is the direction of north. For that, I just use something really basic. You can go into shapes and select an arrow. Usually just try and keep it simple like that. You can have no fill or you can have fill if you want. And then I insert a text box. And in the text box, I just put an N for north. Super simple. I drag it on top, make it a little bigger, make sure it's in the middle of the arrow. And there you go, you've got your north arrow. If you want to keep it like this forever, you can select the text box and then hit the shift button and then select the arrow. Can you see that I've selected both of those items now? Then I right click on the mouse and I can group them. So I go down to group, group. And so now you can see it's all one shape and I can move it anywhere as one piece. If I want to edit it later on, I can always go and then ungroup it and then change the font if I want or the color, whatever I like. So there's my north arrow. Now I've got my lines. So I want all the lines that are on one side to come to the same spot. And I want them to stay perfectly horizontal. So this one got lost somewhere in translation. There we go. And then these ones. We're going to delete this vertical line when we're done. It's just so that we have a way to line up all the font and all the lines so that they meet. So this one I'm not going to do because that's actually the roadway indicating Wilson. So it's going to get much clearer once we have our labels on. So I'm going to insert a text box here. And this was my existing, let's call it a roto. So if it's existing already, you can just put in exist. I'm going to hit capitalize so everything is capitalized. Existing with a period, so that stands for existing roto. Now you'll notice I'm not going to use botanical names on this, even though I find them very important. The reason is this concept is for the homeowner to look at. If I'm using fancy scientific words, they're not going to recognize it as the cedar that they've looked out their window and loved all these years, or the pine tree that they've hated for years because it's dropped needles. So common names or the names the client refers to it as are perfectly acceptable and even recommended for a concept plan. Okay, so I've got my first label. I think the font is a little bit big, so I can reduce it here just by selecting the down arrow, or I can click on the drop box and make the font smaller. You can see that I've lined up the text box at the left on the line with the dot. So there's a little bit of a gap. When I take away the vertical line, it'll look nice and clean. I will select that box again, and then I will hit Control C and Control V and go down. So I'm just copying and pasting so all the labels are the same font and the same size. I don't have to redo it every time. Okay, so this is my shed. We'll call this garden bed. Call this concrete patio. What am I missing? This is existing. I think this looks like a cedar. So we'll call it a cedar. And then I want one more fir. Looks like a Douglas fir in the picture. I don't really know what it is. So I'm going to try and line up these two text boxes so that the R's are in the same distance from the line. Now I'm going to copy and paste this one more time, and I'm going to put a label in here, residence, and then one more for the driveway. The driveway I feel isn't as important as the residence, so I'll probably make that font a bit smaller so you can still read it, but it's not standing out as something that's vitally important. One label that I didn't put in that I would like to see, so I'm copying and pasting these two things, is the property line. So I want to indicate that that is the property line. When I have this selected, if I want to select this as well, I hit the Shift button, hold it down while I click it. Now I've selected both. I'm going to hit Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, and I'm going to indicate the fence here as well. Okay, so we have everything labeled in our existing. So for a site assessment, we have all the existing features that we'd be talking about. I didn't bother drawing in these beds. I'm assuming the client is going to change those out. It's not necessary to indicate where those are for the concept plan. Now we will move on to the next step. Here I've got my arrow, my labels. Now I can go in and put in the changes I want to make. I'm going to leave those there actually. We can decide to do whatever we want. I'll show you a few ways to put in some interesting things. First, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can just see the backyard. Okay, so for this, I'm going to use the freeform again. Say I want to put in a little corner garden. The more clicks you make when you're using this, the more natural a rounded shape it will become. Okay, so say this is my garden. I'm going to take away the line because that immediately gets rid of the sharp edges there. I will make it green for garden. And then one of the things to make it look a bit softer is you can select this pentagon here and you can click on soft edges and click how soft you want the edges. So there's different variations so it doesn't look so rigid. Okay, so that will be my little garden area. Maybe I'll put in a fountain. So I'm going to use circles for a fountain. Okay, so I've just put in a couple of circles to represent my fountain. Nothing fancy, it's just showing them where it goes and how big it's going to be. Now, say I want to put in a pergola, I can just use rectangles. So here's a rectangle that I'm going to change the color to brown because I want to have a wooden pergola. And I will get rid of the lines. And now these detailed work is easier to zoom to 400. And I'm just going to hit Control-C, Control-V. And the PowerPoint will help me line them up. Maybe I want them further apart. I can do that. So those red lines on either side indicate they're lined up. And then if I want the spacing to match, you can see the spacing. The red arrows are showing that it's the same distance apart. That's the nice thing about PowerPoint. There we go. And I'll do one more. And then I want the cross braces for the pergola. So I'll paste it one more time, but then I'll rotate it. All right, there's my pergola. Simple, but when I zoom out, you can see how big the pergola is and you can see where it is. Next, maybe you want to put in a patio. Maybe I can do this quickly before I run out of video time. I'm going to insert a shape. Maybe we'll put in a rectangle patio just for ease. I'm going to put in this little patio here. I can do a gray fill. They have some preloaded textures here. So if you use something like this and you get rid of the line, if I click off it, you can see it kind of looks stone-ish, right? It kind of gives the idea of it. So I'm going to select this patio again because maybe I don't like that. And I'm going to go back to the fill and I can go online. And so here I can look for, let's say I want to do flagstone. I can search for flagstone. Sorry folks, we ran out of time for part 2 recording. Please stay tuned for part 3.